important that we start the podcast here because I want to bring up something very important.
Please.
Is there a dude you see in movies where you'd be like, God, I would fuck him?
I mean, I'm thinking late 1970s Chevy Chase. No, I don't know.
Because every time I see whoever plays Hawkeye on the screen, I go, God, I love that guy.
Really? Renner?
And I love him.
He's a little beat up to me. I don't know. He's just got a weird face.
Yeah, he does, and that's why. Like, it's very weird. And
I like
interesting
faces.
If I saw him in a room.
See, because I'm not like, if I was gonna be attracted to dudes, I don't think it would be like Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans or like the Pretty Boys. It doesn't really do it for me. I need something like a little interesting, but not as like beat up as Renner. It's not nice. I like Renner, but you probably say the same thing about me. So
if I don't know. Like, I am firmly heterosexual. Don't think I've ever had I
don't think something's coming out.
Thinking about
Something's in your mind. You pause and you're like, "Oh my God, was that a dream?"
I'm just double checking. Yeah, like never had any real interest in men. So I'm saying this from a place of love. Jeremy Renner is very fuckable,
okay.
And
he would love to hear that. You know what?
But
he's probably the guy that people tell him that like a lot. That's probably got to be kind of annoying if you're famous.
But that funny thing is the way you're saying it. For chicks, Hemsworth is kind of like Angelina Jolie.
Right.
Like, I've never been into chicks like that.
I'm with you. Like, I recognize that she is very attractive, and she was quite stunning when we were younger. Like, she was one of those it girls. I get that. But not really. It didn't really do it for me.
Scarlett Johansson in Iron Man 2. Do you remember what she looked like in that movie? They over-sexualized her all to hell.
Yeah.
And
it was
awesome.
Better for it.
It was
the best Black Widow I've ever seen. I don't know why everybody's complaining about it.
Yeah.
She always struck me as amazing in Match Point, the Woody Allen film that she was in. Do you remember that? Oh yeah, she was good in that.
Never saw it. Yeah, she's a lovely lady. But let's get back to this banging dudes thing. Jeremy Renner or Seth Rogen?
For some reason, Seth Rogen. I thought Seth Green for a second because we're covering Austin Powers. And I was like, wow, Seth Green. I wonder if he ever gets thrown into this. He probably doesn't. I feel bad for that.
I think
Seth Rogen, like the new bow tie wearing Seth Rogen that we've all seen lately.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The vase making.
I might have to go with Rogen. I don't know. You get some weed out of it.
So Seth Rogen or Paul Rudd?
Jeez. I think Rudd's a little. I think he's like a little man. I just don't think like he's got an attractive face, but I don't know what else he's got going for him.
Isn't he like 60?
No, he's like 50, early 50, maybe 51. So, I don't know.
Are you staying with Seth Rogen?
Yeah, I'll stay with Seth Rogen.
Okay,
I'm talking like Seth Rogen now, not like Seth Rogen from Knocked Up.
Oh, and Seth Rogen is exactly as old as we are. He's 39.
Wow, weird.
So let's see. Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill.
Seth Rogen.
No, that's easy. Seth Rogen. Yeah. Oh, okay. Here it is. Seth Rogen or James Franco.
Old Frank.
Are you looking at pictures of them as you decide?
In my head.
Because I'm looking at pictures.
I mean, you haven't thrown anybody out that is more of an interesting night.
James Franco's interesting. That's why I changed to him.
Than Seth Rogen to me. And I'm not even that huge of a Seth Rogen fan, but just
you're just interested in what they bring to the table.
I'm like, could I have a relationship? Is what I'm thinking, and I'm like, I think Rogen and I could really be happy together. But I don't know if Franco or I would have much in common. Like, he seems a little out there and a little too.
And I think that he would bring some weird energy.
Yeah.
Michael Cera?
No.
I'm just seeing actors now.
Because a nerd.
No, it would be terrible.
Like, they're all good. They're all good. All these weird kids. Like, I mean, we're probably the same age too. But
yeah,
they got lucky. Like, it was the time. They were in the right decade to get work, right? Because I wouldn't see him being hired to like star in an Edgar Wright movie as a superhero now, like Scott, whatever that movie is. Where they fight all the boys. Yeah, Like, that was that time and place. Like, it was a good thing you were doing the super bad movies when you were, because you are not going to be that person anymore. And the same goes with, what's his name from The Social Network?
I like that guy, but I
like
kind of hate him.
But yeah. Luther is an anomaly. Like, giving him that role was just like Zack Snyder. Giving him that role was like Quentin Tarantino raising John Travolta from the dead for Pulp Fiction. Like, Zack Snyder's like, hey, you know who's going to be Lex Luthor? And I'm going to make this work. The kid from The Social Media. And they're like, we'd rather have Kevin Spacey come back. That sounds like the worst idea. He's like, no, I'm going to make it work. And it kind of worked. So, anyway.
It kind of worked.
He's one of those guys to me.
Channing Tatum.
Oh, yeah. He's like a dumb Angelina Jolie. No, that's not fair either. Because he's not bad in movies. You want to think of him as that dumb guy because he is kind of a dumb looking guy. But he can act, I'll give it to him.
Okay, I'm going to close out what male actor would you fuck with a weird one. Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
I feel like he would hurt you in
He's
the
too
sack.
rich. He's too rich in my eyes. Like, I wouldn't. He's like a Kardashian.
Okay, but in reality, do you have an actress where you're like, oh, the same idea?
Well, see, I was just thinking, like, we couldn't really do this, talking about women.
Well, anyway, should we do the podcast now?
Oh, right.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Justin and Aaron Talk Sequels, a podcast about movie sequels. We discuss them. I'm Justin.
I'm Aaron.
Today, we will be in conversation about what film, Aaron?
Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. And, of course, we'll give a recap of the first movie.
See, that's another trouble with these movies. I have a hard time figuring out which one was which. I thought The Spy Who Shagged Me. No, it's clearly, I'm looking at the picture, so it's not confusing. Yeah. But when you just say the titles, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, Austin Powers in Goldmember.
And if they make a fourth one, I guarantee you it'll be Austin Powers, Live and Let Shag.
There's no way they ever do a fourth one.
There is a way, for sure. Because we cover these kind of movies all the time where they're like the decades late sequels. Because this was like 2002 or something, right? When Goldmember came out. So it's been a long time. It's almost 20 years. They've been talking about a fourth movie ever since. But I could see it actually happening. But it'll be weird and he'll be old.
Exactly. So if they did do it, it needs to be the one where they got Sean Connery to come back.
Yeah, never Say Never Again.
Something.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a parody on that.
Yeah, that's possible.
What are your thoughts overall on the parody genre?
I definitely grew up with it a lot. And I think like Hot Shots stood out. Like we were seeing a lot of those kind of movies. Leslie Nielsen. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Naked Gun for sure. And then Leslie Nielsen's films, because Mel Brooks really got into it in the 90s, the parodies. He did a couple, like, Young Frankenstein is one of his most famous, but he really doubled down hard in the 90s, like with Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and Dracula, Dead and Loving It, and I feel like there's another one in there. Yeah. So we would definitely go to the theater and see a lot of parody films.
There's movies like this and movies like the Mel Brooks films. I put these movies more in the Mel Brooks side rather than like the scary movie side.
Yes, like the Wayans brothers films. Yeah, those.
Because like Naked Gun is more on the scary movie side too, like where it's, what's the word where it doesn't even bother with reality?
I don't remember. I don't know what the word is.
Then you've got movies like Brooks and like Austin Powers that do the same thing, but they have a more traditional plot structure that easier to follow.
Sure. Well, do you like the first film?
Yes, it is a good movie.
Yeah. And I think the point you're making that I agree with most is that, like, Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery, which came out in 97, correct?
Yeah.
It was inspired, and, like, I don't even think he would call it a parody. I think Myers would say it's more inspired by that world that James Bond inhabited and, like, Peter Sellers films that he enjoyed from when he was a kid. But it was like an actual story that he had. Here's a real film, and it's fun because it's has these elements. But then once they made the sequel, straight up parody, because he did everything worth doing with the first movie, as happens quite a lot. But it's such a hit that you have to make a sequel, and then you're just throwing anything at it and you're hoping it's funny. And that's where the sequel, in my mind, exists. But the first movie actually comes from like an honest, real place.
I like that, Reed. That's good. And I was reading about the inspirations for this movie, and I didn't know there were so many direct inspirations.
Yeah.
Like there was an actual British TV show where an agent was frozen in time. And then there was an actual bad guy that had an army of female robots.
Well, yeah, we all know Mike Myers because he was on SNL, but he's Canadian and his parents were from Liverpool. So he grew up loving everything English because they were very English, even though they lived in Canada. So, he and his dad was a huge supporter of his. And when he died in 1991, Myers said he was taking stock in all of the things that like his dad introduced to him throughout his life, like the Beatles, like Monty Python, James Bond films, Peter Sellers movies, which was like his favorite. Did you ever see Casino Royale, the Peter Sellers film?
No.
Woody Allen wrote. So he writes this whole movie about multiple James Bonds. Like David Niven is a James Bond, Peter Sellers plays a James Bond. Woody Allen is like the bad guy in it, and he plays Jimmy Bond, who's like the nephew of the real James Bond. Orson Welles is in it. It's like a total farce movie. It doesn't even make a lot of sense a lot of the times. It's really not even that good, except it's totally that 60s swinging London feel that we see so well parodied in the Austin Powers movies. So I think that was like probably the biggest inspiration for Austin Powers, but also just James Bond in general. So anyways, after he left SNL and he was doing the Wayne's World movies, he put a band together with one of the girls that was in the Bangles. I don't know if you're familiar. They did the song Walk Like an Egyptian, Susanna Hoffs. And their band was called Ming T. So they all came up with 1960s British-inspired personas as band members. And that he came up with was a guy named Austin Powers. And his wife at the time was like, and she may still be his wife, but she was like, Mike, you should turn that Austin Powers guy in your band into an actual movie. And that's where this whole thing came from.
Mike Myers has this franchise, and he has Shrek.
Wayne's World.
And Wayne's World to a lesser extent.
Well, I mean, Wayne's World was so huge, which then led into Austin Powers being so huge. And then Shrek was like bigger than anyone could imagine how huge and money-making those films were.
I've been trying to track down, how much back end he made on these movies, because he produced as well. Mm-hmm. And it looks like it's roughly 15% after break even. After this and after Shrek, he didn't have to ever do anything again if he didn't want to. Did you ever see The Cat in the Hat? God awful.
Yeah.
God
well,
awful.
And he made the Love Guru film. Do you see that one?
Yeah, back then, but never again.
And that was like something Peter Sellers would have done, because he also did a movie called The Party where he plays an Indian.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And he's great at it, of course, but it's total, like, not appropriate nowadays for a white dude to play a minority. And it was like he's a man out of time, but not in a cute way like Austin Powers was. They were just like, you can't do this anymore. So I think after that experience, and it was also a total bomb, I think he just stepped back and was just like, I don't really know where my place is in comedy films anymore. And I think he just kind of went off to raise his family. And he pops up here and there. Like he was in Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards. He played a general.
Yeah, for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And then he was the manager or a record company owner in Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen biopic.
Yep.
Nothing too serious. But I think the one thing that would actually bring him out of retirement to do a new film would be Austin Powers 4. But again, a lot of that stuff that made Austin Powers popular I don't think it would be well received nowadays, especially the womanizing. So it would have to be straight up parody in order to really pull all that off.
Watching these movies again, like they've aged pretty well. Like I didn't look at anything and get too offended.
Fairly well. I think the way Elizabeth Hurley puts up with his inappropriate sexual advances in the workplace is definitely eye-rolling nowadays, because you're just like, she's supposed to think it's cute. She comes around to how cute and inappropriate he is in the first movie. And that is not something that you would ever make a movie about nowadays.
No.
But that's the only thing that really stood out to me. Other than that, it was just this dude from the 60s trying to find his way in the 90s. So it made sense that he was definitely a little behind as far as things like that go.
So he does Inglourious Bastards, and he does another Shrek. That's 2010. After that, he's in three documentaries.
Yeah, he did that one about Shep Gordon, who was his manager, and he managed Alice Cooper's band, and it was a really fascinating documentary if you ever get a chance to see it.
I don't watch a lot of documentaries. I should. He also directed it. He did some voice work, and then 2018, so 8 years later, is a little bit in The Terminal, a little bit in Bohemian Rhapsody.
He was in The Terminal?
No, Terminal. It's a weird... This is Von Stein?
Oh, some foreign film. I don't know.
Starring Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie? Is it really Robbie? Is that how you're saying your name, or Robbie?
I always said Robbie.
Really?
I think it's Robbie.
Why would you say Robbie when it looks like Robbie?
Why would you say Robbie when it looks like
Because Robbie's like a guy's name, like Robbie Robertson.
It is
Bob Dylan's guitarist. He was also in the band, I guess I should say, more importantly.
It says you're right.
Well, yeah. Why would it be Robbie? Get the hell out of here. You're like a man out of time. Much like Austin Powers in the 1997 movie. Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery.
And I mean, everybody in the world has seen these movies.
I think so.
Like, throughout these movies, we have Austin Powers defeating Dr. Evil, who has a ridiculous plan to either take over the world or get a lot of money from the governments of the world.
We meet Austin Powers, and his whole reason to exist is that he's just a 60s loving swinger in London, and everything. It's like, this one takes it like to the max. It's probably more colorful and crazier swing in London than really existed, but it's fun. And Dr. Evil is hatching another one of his plans, who's definitely based on Donald Pleasance's character Blofeld from which one?
Ooh,
I would say he was in You Only Live Twice. I'm gonna say a James Bond film.
The inspirations for these are always going to be a blind spot for me. I have probably seen 2 James Bond movies. That has never really been my thing.
Yeah, Donald Pleasance as Blofeld in 1 or 2 of the James Bond films. Like, this is like an almost carbon copy of how he looks, basically, especially with the cat and the scar on his face. So they didn't even like try to do their own version. They were just like, let's just have him look like Blofeld. And they were like, okay. Anyway, but he tries to assassinate Austin Powers at a club he's dancing at. And then he goes and runs up the stairs, and he jumps into a cryogenic egg that launches out of a big boy into space to freeze himself. Yes. And I guess he does it because he thinks he can better take over the world in the future when Austin Powers isn't around.
And so Austin is then frozen.
And then one of the greatest character names is Basil Exposition, played by Michael York. He just says, Austin, he volunteered to freeze himself until Dr. Evil came back. So that's all you need to get up to 1997 is that Austin just froze himself in preparation for Dr. Evil's return, which Dr. Evil eventually does. He comes back to Earth.
His empire has grown into this massive success because he hasn't been there.
Yeah, Turner Broadcasting. I love these movies. I love this film. I think it's so funny, and there's so many things about it which are funny, including Robert Wagner's, number 2, who's been taken over VirtueCon, which is Dr. Evil's company. And yeah, you're right. He made it into this worldwide success telecommunications company. So they make like, what does he say? Like, we make over $9 billion a year. When Dr. Evil was like, let's hold the world ransom for $1 million. And he's like, you might want to raise that. We alone make $9 billion. Like, he doesn't even care that his company is perfectly profitable. He's so evil. He just wants to go back to what he was always doing, taking over the world.
Yeah, so Austin wakes up. He's woken up by Basil.
Oh, and when he's going through his like reanimating procedure, his physical comedy is brilliant. And it's not even like when he takes a pee and it lasts like 5 minutes. Like, that's humorous. I liked that as a kid. That was funny. But like when they like turn him around to like try to find the toilet, he like walks one way and then they stop him and then he like walks the other way. That's just like Mike Myers to me. Is like, he was such a brilliant comedian, and it's just those little touches that really make this movie a sensation in my eyes.
It's so hard to talk about these movies in any kind of traditional way like we usually do, just because so much of it is just the genius of Mike Myers.
And he says most of it was like improvised, I guess, or a large portion. But if this is one of those things, like when we talk about how like you improvise a movie and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't work, and you just like pissed your money away on this movie you thought would like, yeah, we'll let the girls in the new Ghostbusters go crazy and it'll be a great movie. No, it didn't work. It wasn't funny. But this is one of those that like if he improvised this movie, it worked, because I was like surprised at how well the movie comes together if he just made it up while they were going along.
Yeah, so Austin Powers is in the 90s. He meets up with the daughter of an agent, Vanessa Kensington, played by Elizabeth Hurley.
Because Mimi Rogers was his partner in the 60s, so it's her daughter, Vanessa.
So yeah, they go to stop Dr. Evil, and they stop him. Seth Green is in this movie, and I like it.
Jesus, you could care less, couldn't you? You're not even near the mic. You're like, I'm just going to hang back here. Who gives a shit? Well, you're right. These movies, they're not built like your normal film. It's all about the comedy set pieces, and those are all great. So the fact that they were able to tie a small story together along the way, that's a bonus. But yeah, so they go from, he acclimates himself to like this new world he's living in, but he's still trying to be the 1960s swinger that he's always been, and Vanessa's there to like basically say like this is not the way we are anymore. Like it's not all about free love and random drug use, and there's like consequences to the world, there's responsibilities. That's what we've learned. But and then they find out like Dr. Evil has a lot of vagina. His one of his cohorts or whatever, she's in Vegas, so then him and Vanessa pretend to be a married couple and go there, and then they interact with number 2 and vagina, and yeah, like he ends up sleeping with her because he's trying to get information about Dr. Evil's plan, and then they find the plan, but then that puts a rift between him and Vanessa because Vanessa thought that they were actually like connecting, but then he just goes off and has some free love sex, and that's kind of when he learns like, oh, I have to change.
Yes,
this world isn't what I always thought it was. And anything else too important to the plot?
Dr. Evil's zany plan is to explode a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, underground.
In the underground.
Yep. Which would activate all the volcanoes around the world. And yeah, unless he gets $100 billion.
And then the UN gives in.
Yeah,
it gives him the money.
No problem.
But he's evil. So he goes to do it anyway.
He does it anyway. Well, and yeah, you mentioned Seth Green is in this as Scott Evil, who was a test tube. Like they froze Dr. Evil's sperm and then they cloned him basically, or they made him a son. Yeah, they made him a son. That's why it's Scott Evil. So then he and Dr. Evil have a father-son relationship that they're trying to work on, and that's pretty humorous, especially when they bring Carrie Fisher in because she's the group therapy instructor.
So I've got Carrie Fisher uncredited and Tom Arnold uncredited. I don't remember Tom Arnold.
Oh, he was the guy in the bathroom in the cowboy hat when Austin Powers is getting strangled by is it Patty O'Brien, the Lucky Charm dude? It's so stupid, but it was so funny. Who does number 2 work for? And Tom Arnold is so brilliant in that. He's like, come on, we're gonna get through this. You tell that piece of shit who's boss, because he just thinks he's taking a dump.
We've got pre-famous Will Ferrell as Mustafa.
Not much of a role there, but that's okay,
The Burt Bacharach.
Yeah, I love Bacharach.
Announced. Like I think I learned who that was because of this movie.
Yeah,
and
God, I love Burt Bacharach. I mean, he did so many things. Well, because he's definitely one of the icons of the '60s, and that he worked with Dionne Warwick and Dusty Springfield and did his own stuff, and so yeah, it was cool. I liked seeing him in that movie, and I think he's still around. Actually, I think he's like in his 90s now.
It's so crazy how old some of these guys get, considering the lifestyle that they had.
Yeah.
So yeah, the main character stops the main bad guy, and then him and the secret agent lady fall in love and get married.
That's pretty much it. Is there anything more to that? What's some of your favorite parts?
Okay, so this is where I've been struggling while talking about these movies, that I absolutely cannot remember what parts happened in what movies.
Oh.
And they repeat so often.
Well, that's why like I love the first movie, but I'm not really a fan of the sequel. So anything that you liked, just think of it as like, I liked that, and it was done the best in the first movie. Them doing the naked thing at the end of the first movie where they have the stuff just in the way so you can't see private parts. Like that was funny in the first movie and well done. But like the second movie starts with him just being naked, running around, and it's a similar thing, but they just take it to the extreme to the point where I was just not, I may have laughed in the sequel like maybe 5 times, and that was it.
Really?
Other than that, it just was like, yeah, this has been done. It's not funny.
I love those naked scenes. They make me giggle like a child.
But like in the sequel, like when he was running around the hotel naked, yeah, it just didn't like. Why was he doing that? I just didn't really understand. It didn't make any sense.
I don't know why, but I'm a little bit of a slut for these movies.
Guess so.
But what stuck out for you in these movies?
Oh, so many things. I love the 1960s feel of everything. Like that was one. I love the production design. I like Elizabeth Hurley in the movie. I like the wardrobes. I like, one of my favorite lines that I still use to this day is when it just comes up all the time. It's quotable. When she's drunk and he's talking about her mother, the original Mrs. Kensington, and he's just like, if there was any man that loved your mother as much as her husband, it was me, but I'm afraid that train has sailed. And it was such like a dramatic reading, but he says that train has sailed. I think about it all the time, and I just sometimes say that. I'm like, I'm sorry, that train has sailed.
Now I need to pay attention for you saying that. I just really always end up saying mole, 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 mole.
Oh, like the fat bastard guys? I just said it.
No, I think that's in the third one.
Oh, don't get there yet. I'm not there yet. I haven't
See,
watched
they
that
all
one.
blend together.
Yeah.
That's where it's tricky.
What else? I mean, even like him trying to back the little cart up in Dr. Evil's place, like simple things, but so funny. Or the dude that's like, no, when the steamroller's coming at him, but it's a mile away. That shit's funny. Yeah. So many things. I just think Mike Myers knocks it out of the park. It's just it's a great character that he created, and it was really unlike anything else. And as Daniel Craig pointed out in a interview, he was like, well, we had to go serious for my movies because Mike Myers ruined James Bond. Like, you couldn't do the gadgets the way it was done, or it would just be laughable because Austin Powers had made fun of everything. So that's what led into Daniel Craig's movies being more of a step back from the Bond mythos and being a serious set of movies.
Yeah, they turned into like Jason Bourne.
Yeah, right.
Those movies I liked. It's so
those
weird.
are great.
With James Bond, have they done the thing where it's a different guy who has the title 007?
But that's the beauty of James Bond, is that they don't have to reboot. You just put somebody else in the role and then you continue on with your stories. But you can't do that with Batman for some reason. I just wish they would. I don't want to see more origin stories, and I'm sure you're going to get an origin shit out of this new Batman.
If we get an origin story, I will be very angry.
Taking them back to when they were younger and starting again, I'm done. I'm over it.
I mean, even Batman Begins, like, just, yeah.
Although I take that back, because they didn't do that with Affleck. He was just Batman.
That's true. But they never had a Batman movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Batman Begins, I think, is the least rewatched one that I watched the other two all the time. I don't think I've watched Batman Begins again.
I never saw Batman Begins again. Is that another one?
So this movie was a pretty big hit. It made $67 million. You would imagine this had strong VHS sales.
I think so, yeah. But it was made for like $16 million, right? So it made a lot of money. Everyone saw the franchise possibilities, obviously. But what's interesting is that he finished the movie like it was a one-off, because he got him married. He acclimated him to the modern age. He put away his womanizing ways, and he got married. Like, that was the end, right? So there wasn't really it's like he didn't make it for a sequel, but then they had to explain why he would be back to Austin Powers in the sequel. So then we get 1999's The Spy Who Shagged Me, a play on words of The Spy Who Loved Me, which is a James Bond film. One of the Roger Moore ones, I believe. Yeah, so it picks up like right after the wedding, right? So they're like on their honeymoon, and he learns that Vanessa. This is the beginning of when they do things that it doesn't matter if it's a complete inconsistency.
And they acknowledge that multiple times.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
So she was a fembot the whole time, I guess.
Yeah.
And Michael York just says, yes, we know. And then he continues on anyway. Yes, we always knew that. Anyway, Austin, our next thing, and there's just like a shrug of the shoulders, which admittedly is funny, but at the same time, like, it lacked the...
I like the other two potentially more, because I've just never taken them as anything other than fun, silly nonsense.
Yeah, I need something, though. I need it to be a good film, too, and then I can, like, remember it more fondly, and that's why I like the first movie. but the other two are just, I imagine Goldmember's the same way, are just forgettable. I mean, I forgot about it the first time I saw it, so maybe it is. But so it turns out Vanessa's a fembot, and then he's single again, so he's happy about that. So he just goes on to be in Austin Powers again. That's where we pick up.
They made it so that the daughter of his partner, who was also a spy like her mom, wasn't real.
Yeah.
But I like the thought that it has a much darker tone. Like Dr. Evil actually killed the real person and replaced her.
I don't see how it would be any other way. At some point, she was murdered and replaced by a robot.
Yeah, which is really sad.
Yeah. When did that happen? I don't know.
Oh, Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
He kills
But they never
people.
go back to Mimi Rogers to see what she thinks about this. Or, in a positive note, maybe she is fine and well living with her mother, and that there's just this double that's been acting as her the whole time. Maybe this girl isn't even part of the... No, that wouldn't make sense either, because her mom calls her on the phone in the first one, knowing that she's working with Austin.
So I think she's still alive in the first one, somewhere between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
She's murdered.
But it's like,
ladies
it
and
picks up
gentlemen.
like the honeymoon. So
Yeah.
when
shit.
Random Task, the guy comes at the very end of the first one and throws his shoe, somehow maybe someone blacks out at that point and they kidnap her and murder her and then replace her with a fembot on their honeymoon. That's a possibility.
So in between like this first scene and the second scene, that's where Austin is actually hunting for her murderer, and then there's a trial, and there's this whole thing that we never get to see.
Speaking of murder, do you know the actor who played Random Task? You know, because he's based on a James Bond character called Odd Job, who threw his hat and could cut off people with the brim of his hat, right? So this is Random Task, which is another, I love that name.
Oh my God. Are you kidding? Joseph's son, Random Task in Austin Powers, sentenced to life in prison for violent 1990 gang rape.
That's why he went to prison. And then when he was in prison, he murdered his cellmate.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, he's a bad dude. So that's just a little aside story. little factoid for the first Austin Powers movie.
That's very, very upsetting.
Mm-hmm. So you'll never see that guy again.
Nope.
But he was, I mean, I'll give him credit. He played a good character in this movie. Despite the horrible person he was, I guess.
Oh, see, that's... Oh, this is the dark side of learning about these films.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into the sequel. So The Spy Who Shagged Me came out in 1999. Obviously, they were going to make a sequel. And so what did they do? They just doubled down on everything that was funny in the first one to annoying extremes, I think. It works for you. It doesn't work for me. It's just too much. Yeah, so Dr. Evil's back, right? The big boy lands or crashes on Earth or whatever. Because that's where he got away again at the end of the first movie. Did we mention that? I don't know. He got away again, got frozen again. But he comes back 2 years later. Or no, he comes back immediately, I guess, right? Because Austin, it was right after the first movie. Yeah, so he comes back to Earth.
What has
happens?
to be a gap.
There is no gap. It's like literally the honeymoon. Maybe it isn't the honeymoon. Maybe it's just they're just together at some point. On a vacation together.
Because we are reintroduced to Dr. Evil on Jerry Springer.
Yes, that's right. He and Scott are still having father-son issues.
Yes.
Yeah. This movie's very dated as well.
Yes.
Like Jerry Springer. Another big thing that really informed this film was the Star Wars prequels. Because The Phantom Menace was coming. Do you remember this was a stroke of genius, I thought. When the Austin Powers Spy Who Shagged Me commercials on TV were playing, it would say, if you're going to see one movie this summer, see Star Wars. They were like, but if you're going to see a second movie, watch Austin Powers and The Spy Who Shagged Me. Because everybody was talking about The Phantom Menace. And they knew that. That's also Moonraker, which is another James Bond film. But this is why they go to space. This is why he has a moon base. This is why there's the Darth Vader joke, I am your father.
How did you know that?
I just remember it. I remember that commercial. It was fascinating. I thought it was so funny that they would tell you not to see their movie.
I'm looking right now.
Well, I'll just continue on. So Dr. Evil's back, and his plan this time...
that was dead air.
Yes. This time, he's going to go back in time to when Austin is still frozen, and steal his mojo.
Yes.
Which is just a MacGuffin, if you will. Like, it doesn't really make much sense what it is exactly, but it just is what gives him his sexual confidence and his ability to be a good super spy. So he goes back to 1969, which would be 30 years from 1999. He meets a young Frau. Well, she's not young. She's the same character, which is funny. And then he meets a young number 2, played brilliantly by Rob Lowe. Yes. Who does a great Robert Wagner impression.
The thing about this, with everything being dialed up to 11, everybody's trying. Everybody's doing
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Good job in these, and they're enjoying the bit. Because Rob Lowe is great.
You know what? You raised the meter on this film just with that comment, and that you're right. Everybody is giving it their all. I wish they had a better story to wrap around this.
I like Dr. Evil's plans, and the entire point of Seth Green as his son is to point out that it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, he's that comedic piece.
Why don't we just shoot him? He's like, why? I'm going to put them in an easily escapable death trap, and I won't even watch to see if they die. I just assume they will. What's wrong with that?
The introduction of Mini-Me is...
Oh, yeah, Mini-Me.
Like, this movie does so many fun things. Fat Bastard is amazing.
It's pretty gross.
It's pretty gross, but it's a great character.
I think Mike Myers was feeling like, I'm just as good as Eddie Murphy. I want to do a fat suit. And while I'm at it, I'm going to discover the voice that I'm going to use for my next franchise, Shrek.
And then I'm going to hire Eddie Murphy.
Oh
showing
God,
that
right.
I'm
the leading man.
That
is so funny.
And these two have very similar comedic sensibilities. Like, Eddie Murphy is kind of a genius. And now we're talking about it. Mike Myers is kind of a genius for the same reason.
It goes off the rails for both of them. That's just, they don't know where to dial it back because they're given a lot of money and they know they're popular and they know they need to deliver. So I think he tries because the Fat Bastard in his mind is like, well, this will be new. But at the same time, like, he just doubles down on a lot of stuff that worked in the first movie, but just becomes obnoxious in this second movie, like the Jerry Springer thing. What's funny now in 1999? Oh, Jerry Springer, that their swearing is getting bleeped out. Can we make it go for 5 minutes? Sure. If they had done it for like 2 minutes, I would have been like, okay, that was funny. But they just kept it going. I'm like, what are you doing? Why?
Was that funny because we're old? I'm very curious to see my kids' reaction to that scene to see if it would be as funny.
Yeah, because they have no conception of what that is. So I don't know. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, no, Jerry Springer I loved that segment. It was great. It was just...
But it just went on too long, didn't it?
No.
The naked perfect. Thing at the beginning went on too long.
No, perfect.
Okay.
I don't remember the first movie. There was no real intro for that movie, was there? No musical.
It was just him
number?
dancing on the street, like he was in Swingin' London, and they did their big dance thing. So yeah, there was.
Okay, so there was an intro.
So this repeats it just by himself generally,
and everything gets bigger and bigger with these intros.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching Goldmember again because I do. If anything, I remember Michael Caine, and then I remember Tom Cruise.
That was that
Spielberg
intro
as well, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that. We'll get to that.
When I watched it, I was like, I always forget that Tom Cruise has some kind of sense of humor.
Yeah. What do you know? He has a little bit of a sense of humor.
When's the last time you watched Tropic Thunder?
Probably last year sometime. I enjoyed that film. It's one I can put on and not really have to pay attention to, but I just enjoy, so that's nice.
It's so funny. I had no idea it was as good as it was.
I mean, maybe Ben Stiller was the person that carried the torch on from Mike Myers. Especially because Jay Roach, who directed Austin Powers movies, went on to make Meet the Parents. Maybe he found a new muse in Ben Stiller because Ben Stiller had kind of a similar career.
He had such a weird career. Like,
he's done a little more dramatic too, because that's the funny thing about Stiller is that he actually was more dramatic in the 90s, right? With what's that movie that every kid loved?
Reality Bites.
Gen X, Reality Bites. And then he did Permanent Midnight, which was like a drug movie. Yeah. And even Cable Guy. Yeah, he directed Cable Guy. It was like a dark comedy, right?
I have a hard time putting my finger on what I don't love about Ben Stiller. Like, he has to be used in a very specific way. Otherwise, his comedy doesn't land for me. It's different.
Do you like Mike Myers more than Ben Stiller?
Oh, yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think
like
they're
Cable
pretty
Guy.
equal.
I don't
Yeah.
love that movie.
Have you watched it again though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got just such a weird sensibility, and it does have Ben Stiller written all over it. Like,
Yeah.
and the Meet the Parents movies, I don't like him in those movies. I don't know.
I like Cable Guy despite Jim Carrey. I think that's what I like. I like Matthew Broderick in it. I like Jack Black in it. And I like the idea of the cable world that people were all into in 1995. I think around there when it came out. And Leslie Mann. I like everything about it. But I'm not that big of a Jim Carrey fan of that film, of his performance in there. But just all of that aside, like, take him out of it, I think it's a pretty good film.
That's actually a good point. I agree with you.
He's a little much. I'd rather see him do, like, he was doing like the Riddler almost. I don't know. I just would rather see him as the Riddler than I would as Chip in The Cable Guy.
That movie reminds me, it's a stalking movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I just care for that genre that much. There was that, it reminds me of Cape Fear.
Yeah, right. It has a Cape Fear feel to it. You're right.
A funny Cape Fear.
Myers did, I mean, he did that 54 film. Do you know that?
Mm-hmm. After these, I think we got really into Myers. I think we actually saw 54 in theaters.
We may have, yeah. But I don't know if he really wanted to do any dramatic roles or try to do things that were a little more serious. I don't think it was really,
I think he just tried it that once. And
yeah. I think he was okay with like supporting characters and those kind of things.
He made The Cat in the Hat. I think I started saying it earlier. The Cat in the Hat was the result of a lawsuit.
Was it really?
Between him and the studio. He was supposed to deliver a movie and he didn't make it, and they sued him, and he countersued saying something along the lines of, they didn't have a script. How am I supposed to make a movie? And they settled, and The Cat in the Hat was basically the settlement.
Wow. Well, and they were probably thinking like, because Ron Howard's, speaking of Jim Carrey again, the Grinch movie, right? That was a hit, wasn't it?
Yep.
For all of its disturbing eyesoreness. Which I actually kind of like the film. I don't think it's that bad as people remember it.
No, that's a good movie.
Yeah, it's not beloved though. People really don't like it, but I think it was fine. I think Jim Carrey again was used appropriately, and he knocks it out of the park as the Grinch.
Yeah.
But anyway, like that worked. They were like, well, obviously, if we use Mike Myers as the Cat in the Hat, boom, that'll be amazing too.
It was really weird.
Was it?
Yeah, it was hard to watch. But hitting on what you just said, Ron Howard, name 3 good movies by Ron Howard.
Apollo 13,
yeah,
one of my favorites. Night Shift, which is an amazing Michael Keaton and what's his name? The Fonz. We've talked about this before. That was one of his first movies.
Yes.
And The Paper. Have you ever seen The Paper with Michael Keaton?
No, I haven't.
That's really good.
This is a wild tangent, but I just want to go through this real quick because I want to name. Somebody already probably has a name for the creative endpoint of a creative person, like where they're good and then they just hit that line.
Well, this is why Tarantino said he would only make 10 movies, because he believes after 10, most film directors never do anything nearly as good as the first 10. That's his thought, which I think is complete bullshit, but that's just what he's been saying for years.
Yeah, I don't agree with him, but I definitely think for a lot of people there is that line.
Yeah.
Let's just call it the Ron Howard line going forward.
Okay.
So he's Ron Howard real quick. Yeah. So he makes Grand Theft Auto, whatever that is. He makes Night Shift. He makes Splash, Cocoon, Gung Ho, which I've never heard of. Willow. I didn't realize he made Willow.
Yeah.
Parenthood, which was good. Backdraft, classic. Far and Away.
Yeah.
The Paper. Apollo 13, arguably his height.
Yeah, I would say.
Ransom, which is a fantastic movie.
With Mel Gibson, right?
Yes. Ed TV, also good.
Totally shut out because of Truman Show, which came out the same year, I remember. Because not to interrupt you, sorry, this is what we do all the time, I'm always interrupting, but he was on like Letterman, I think Ron Howard was, and he was talking about his movie, and Letterman is like, it's like the Truman Show, right? And Ron Howard was like, yeah, you're right. Ed TV is just like the Truman Show. See it if you want to. He was so like, he took it with a lot of good humor, but it was pretty funny, where he was like, yes, that's exactly what it is. Thank you. A lot of people would say it's a better film, though. Anyway.
There's an interesting line right here between Ransom and Ed TV where there's a strong shift in Ron Howard's filmography. And that's where he begins to produce every one of his movies. So
interesting.
After the movies where he's the producer, Ed TV, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, A Beautiful Mind, and then
I like that
The
movie.
Missing,
Yeah,
which I've not heard
Tommy Lee
of.
Jones and Kate Blanchett.
Cinderella Man, The Da Vinci Code,
All three of those, right?
Frost Nixon, which is
That
arguably
was good.
good, Angels and Demons, The Dilemma, Rush, In the Heart of the Sea, Inferno, and
That's
then
the other Da Vinci Code movie.
and so you could almost say once he started producing his own stuff, he's where his Ron Howard line is.
I mean, but like some of those are pretty good. I think they just don't. They're just not remembered.
Yeah, some of those are good.
Like In the Heart of the Sea, I think is really good, but nobody really cares. I think he has a very similar career to Ridley Scott. Like Ridley Scott puts out a lot of movies, and most of them you don't even remember. But every once in a while, he comes up with one that's just like, oh, that was really good. Like, because he's doing this House of Gucci movie, right? But I think everybody's just interested in the fact that Lady Gaga's in it and Jared Leto plays an old dude. But I don't know if anybody's going to ever remember that movie beyond those performances. But he also just put out The Last Duel.
I was going to say
same
he made
fucking
2 this
year.
year.
And
Yeah.
everybody said that sucked. And nobody's going to remember that thing.
Everybody
but he
says
did
that's-
Prometheus, and people remember that. I don't know, it's just like he's up and down. Like he does a lot of like filler stuff, and then he'll come through with one that's like memorable every once in a while.
Last Duel is supposed to be really good. House of Gucci is not supposed to be very good.
I heard Last Duel was crap.
I think it overall got good reviews.
Oh, okay. Well,
So before these two, he hadn't made a movie in 4 years. That was 2017. Alien Covenant and All the Money in the World.
oh yeah, All the Money in the World, which is only remembered because they took Kevin Spacey out of it and reshot his.
But
role.
Alien Covenant, like, totally good movie. And
Yeah, people remember that.
and then his movie before. Okay, yeah, I don't think this is a good comparison because I remember every one of these. Before that, The Martian. Now he's got a weird one in 2014, Exodus, his Bible movie where he famously
Whitewash.
got some shit for whitewashed, and he was like,
totally.
"This movie's funded like by grants from Spain. I would have never gotten it made if the star was named Muhammad something or another." Was what his quote was.
Well, everybody was pissed off at Matt Damon for doing that movie where he was like helping China like defend the Great Wall against monsters. Did you see that? The Great Wall, wasn't that what it was called? But he was just like, look, China half funded the thing, and they wanted me because they know their people will come out and see me, like, because I'm an American star. So he's just like, sorry, not sorry. Like, what do you want me to do? He's like, they're not going to cast one of their own as the lead because it's not going to be as big as if I was doing it. That's just the way it is. And it's hard to say that without sounding like an asshole, but I'm like, that's what China wants. I'm not going to hold it against them.
Yeah. Then, so 2013, there's The Counselor, and then we've got Prometheus, we've got Robin Hood, we got Body of Lies, American Gangster, A Good Year, which I've never heard of.
It's another Russell Crowe film.
So, like, his early aughts are kind of whatever.
Yeah, but isn't
That's
it?
not even true.
I think it's a comparison to say that they just they seem to make a lot of movies, and they're very different movies all the time. Like they don't have that. They're no Wes Anderson, Tarantino, even Scorsese. Like they don't have that thing that makes them who they are. They can kind of just make any kind of movie. Like you may not know that Ron Howard directed that film. You may not know that Ridley Scott directed House of Gucci. Like there's nothing that says this is a Ridley Scott film.
When I heard that Ron Howard was taking over for Solo, I didn't get as excited.
I think that is what ruined you on Ron Howard. I think that's what ruined a lot of people. People were very disappointed in Solo. And then they turned around and said, Ron Howard sucks. And I don't think that's fair at all. I think he's a great American director, one of our best.
Yeah, what did you think of Inferno? Were you a fan?
Oh, I never saw anything. I saw the Da Vinci Codes. I saw that movie. I never saw the sequels.
I never even saw the Da Vinci Code.
I mean, I like Tom Hanks, so, it was good enough to watch the Da Vinci Code, but it didn't grab me for the rest of them.
I was filled with fear when he took over for Solo in the same way that I was filled with fear, and hopefully incorrectly, when Evil Dead guy took over for Doctor Strange.
Yeah, right. Feels like a paycheck movie.
And it feels like they get to a certain age where they just do paycheck movies. Because they just don't care anymore.
I don't think it's because they don't care. It's just they want to work.
It is a very different scenario. Why can't I think of his name? Will you please?
Sam Raimi.
Sam Raimi. Because, I mean, he'd only done, what, 1 or 2 movies after Spider-Man?
Yeah.
I think he cashed a big check. And
I think you have a long career, and then you're like, what do I do now? I feel like I told a lot of stories. I feel like I really did everything that I want to do that's personal to me. So, I don't know. I think for Ron Howard, he was like, him and Lucas have been friends since they were kids. Like, that's just the way it is. So for now that he was like Jason Reitman directing the new Ghostbusters. It's something that meant a lot to him as a child and is part of his family, that he was like, I'm so glad I can now put my stamp on this franchise. And I think that's what Howard was with Solo. He's like, hey, I always wanted to direct a Star Wars movie. I love that I have this chance. So yeah. But I just didn't think it was that great of a film, but it wasn't bad by any means.
Why didn't Ivan Reitman just direct the new Ghostbusters?
Why didn't he?
I'm very confused.
This is another Landis thing. Remember how I was talking about how like Landis does Blues Brothers 2000 and it just sucks and it looks like some amateur like who didn't know how to make a movie made a movie? But I'm like, you were fucking John Landis. Like, you ruled the 80s box office. You are just as good as Wes Anderson, Quentin Tarantino, any of those guys making movies in the 90s. You don't have to be an old dude that doesn't know what he's doing anymore. Step up to the plate and make it. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something in them that are just like, I'm too old now and I don't know what I'm doing. And I think that's how Ivan Reitman is like, I can't direct anymore. I wouldn't know how to do it.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
So Dr. Evil...
Where the hell did we leave off in this movie? We went on a big tangent.
So, God, we haven't covered any of this plot. So Austin meets a CIA spy played by Heather Graham, who I don't think could have the same career if she was a leading lady today.
She was used so brilliantly as Roller Girl in Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights that it really gave her a lot of clout, I guess, in the industry where she could get picked up, in other big films. I mean, she's a beautiful woman and she fills out these outfits amazingly, in this 1960s style. So she's well used in this film. But yeah, I never thought that she was that strong of an actress.
Yeah.
But they don't ask her to do much either. I mean, beyond that, it's not like it's her fault. She's pretty much doing exactly what the script is asking her to do. If there really is a script, which I'm not convinced there is. Yeah, so he ends up taking a tricked out VW bug back to the past to follow Dr. Evil. Does he go back because he realized? No, he doesn't know his mojo's gone. He just knows that Dr. Evil's in the past. Why does he go back? I can't remember.
I think they know somehow. He's going back to steal your mojo.
Until... Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he does know.
My problem with that, and it's silly to have a problem with these movies, but Dr. Evil actually steals his mojo. So that should have some kind of impact on Austin, but it doesn't.
It only does when he's almost about to have sex. Then it becomes something where it's like, you can't get it up. That was it. Because remember, he was gonna bang the girl from Third Rock from the Sun, who was that like Russian operative or whatever. Yeah. And then he realized he couldn't. And that was the first that was the first time he realized his mojo was gone. Wasn't that it?
So the concept is he's just impotent right now?
I guess so, yeah. But it's supposed to be so much more.
Yeah.
It's everything that makes him who he is.
Yeah, that's
the part. But they only use it in that it makes him impotent. I
mean, it would have been a great visual gag if like he steals his mojo in the past and then all of a sudden like we get Austin Powers like in a suit and tie and like looking like
the Nutty Professor, like the Jerry Lewis style.
Yes.
Like he would have been suave Nutty Professor, and then he would have gone to the nerd stage. Like that would have
had to bungle his way through.
Yes, totally.
Like that would have been, I think, a great addition.
Because he could have been inspired by is it Get Short? Is that what it is? That old TV show where the guy he was a secret agent, but he was a really bumbling secret agent.
Something along, Get Smart.
Yeah, it was Get Short, wasn't it? Get Smart.
Yeah.
Get Smart, yeah. Get Shorty is the movie.
John Travolta's Danny DeVito movie, yeah.
Yes, this is Get Smart, yeah, where he was and he had the shoe phone. That's what I remember about that. Yes. Anyway, he should have went in that way. Yes, exactly. Or even Walter Mitty, like just this kind of bumbling.
I never saw that. Was that good?
I don't know if I ever saw it either. I'm just familiar with it.
Oh, anyway.
Yeah, so he goes back. He meets Felicity Shagwell.
Yes.
Pretty good name. She's an American, which I thought was a nice addition. Like now he's up again with an American partner.
Yeah.
And I like that they went back to the 60s. I do like that era. I thought that was a nice thing for him to get back there since he skipped out on the rest of it in order to be frozen, which is a horrible idea. Why would he do that? That was his time. He shouldn't have froze himself out of it.
It was 2 years after he was frozen, something along that line.
Mm-hmm. So he's still frozen. But then like Fat Bastard is him in a fat suit, and he's this like Scottish brogue who is the one who stole because he works for Dr. Evil, so he stole the mojo, and stuff happens. A lot of this is about Dr. Evil's silliness. Like he gets cloned, so we have Mini-Me, played by Vern Troyer, who hates Scott, which is fine.
Yeah.
It grows super old pretty quick for my attention span. Like I don't care about Mini-Me beyond the idea that it's like he's a small version of him.
It feels like Michael Myers, Jay Roach, they were really great at timing, and the rhythm of this movie never feels unbalanced to me. It doesn't feel like a joke ever goes too long or too repetitive. Like I feel like they use it very tastefully throughout. But again, that's just individual preference.
I just don't think so, because like what do they fill the movie with? They fill it with gags that they're playing piano together, and then he sings that Will Smith song, The Two of Us, you know,
when they get arrested. Yep.
And it's just bizarre. I don't know.
No, that
get
was
arrested.
Sorry,
no, you're thinking about the third movie.
I'm thinking about the third one.
No, this is the one where they're in the moon base. They have a moon base because Dr. Evil's plan this time is that he has a laser on the moon and he's going to destroy cities around the Earth. They have to take a trip on Apollo 11 in order to go to the moon, like during the moon landing. So Felicity and Austin go to the moon base, and they basically stop Dr. Evil, but he has to use the time machine again in order to save Felicity.
Yes, because Dr. Evil kills another one of his loves.
Yes. But then he tells Austin you could go back and save her. I guess he tells him because like that's how he can escape, is if Austin's busy doing that.
Yes, it was you have to do this or you have to do this.
Yeah.
Simple choice.
And he does escape, right? Him and Mini-Me are fine. Like Mini-Me gets shot out into space, but he survives because
yep, he goes and he picks him up.
Yeah, he just picks him up. Yeah, none of this movie makes sense in any way, and like I said, I didn't find it that funny. I liked Heather Graham in it. I thought that was nice. I liked that it went back to the 60s. I like Rob Lowe a lot. I hope that Goldmember is a career or a correction on the mistakes they made in the second one, but you're shaking your head saying no. It's just more of the same, isn't it?
It's more of the same.
More of the same. God damn it.
And it's great.
All right, that's cool. I mean, that's fine. I'll be okay with that.
So if I'm reading this right, this is the movie where he got at least 15% of the 15% after break even, and the guess is that break even is around the budget was 33. Advertising was estimated at about 30. So he probably made, with back end and his salary, roughly $60 million.
Wow.
Making this movie.
I mean, it was an enormous hit.
Yep.
Especially in the summer of Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
I mean, it made a lot of money, even though it was going up against the biggest talked about movie.
Yeah,
of,
that is
like the whole decade, probably. I don't know.
Made 312. So the first movie didn't do much internationally. I guess New Line does their distribution deals a little differently, but this one, it actually made money internationally. Yeah, so first movie, big hit. Parts 2 and 3 kind of just become a celebration of the first movie and don't take themselves too seriously. You've all seen this movie, so you kind of know that. That's about it.
Yeah, what's left to be said about this? There's this part when he's in the bug and he's going to go back to the past and they break the fourth wall. Mm-hmm. Relax about all this and have a good time. I thought that was funny. What is there a problem in him going back that didn't make any sense? Because I thought it actually made sense. Like he was frozen in 1967. So he was frozen from 67 to 97. Dr. Evil was also frozen from 67 to 97 in space. So the Austin Powers of 1999 is going to go back in time to 1969. What's wrong about that? There's some sort of paradox that was so obvious to Mike Myers when he was writing this that he had to put that scene in, but I, for the life of me, can't tell what that paradox is.
Why wouldn't he just take the car in 2 hours into the past and stop Dr. Evil from going back into the past?
Well, they didn't mention that. I don't think that was part of their explanation, but
like you could.
They were worried about something that.
If you're time traveling, you could really do anything. Why not just time travel back in time and kill Dr. Evil? Like, did Austin ever have a foil like Seth Green to point out when Austin was doing stuff that didn't make any sense?
Yeah, right.
Because if Seth Green had been in that room, he would have been like, "Well, let's just go back in time and kill him."
Yeah. Oh, well, let me tell you, Austin Powers 4 will definitely have a son in it, right? He'll have a daughter, which will then tie into nowadays where she's going to be like telling him like, Dad, this is not appropriate anymore or whatever. But she's also a secret agent or something.
See, and that would be great parody because it's already a parody and they're parodying these legacy sequels, and that's great.
Who would play the daughter and or son of Austin Powers in a movie that comes out, let's say 2023?
Michael Cera.
No, he's too old. I would like to think that, I don't remember how Goldmember ends, but I would like to think that Austin Powers and Beyonce Knowles' character in that movie, that they have a son together.
I don't.
Who would that be? That would be born in like 2003. 20-year-old secret agent. You don't know.
Do you have somebody in mind?
No, I got nobody.
Oh.
Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if. I don't think they tried the whole married thing again. I think they just leave him single.
Okay.
I've watched the movie, and again, I already forget. Like that's
forgettable.
It's all of these are just so interchangeable, and it's not even
not
a bad
the first
thing.
one. I'm telling you, the first one is pretty gold, man. It's good. Mm-hmm. It didn't need anything past it, but it was no surprise that it got sequels.
So we want to hear from you, audience. Which Austin Power movie was your favorite? The first one, the second one, or the third one?
Which we haven't even talked about yet, but we will get to in the next episode.
Yeah, Jay Roach. This is my final thought. He didn't really make movies before Austin Powers.
No. Yeah, it was one of his first.
Like, he made one in 1990, and then his next one was Austin Powers. But he made some good movies.
He's been working for HBO in the past, like his last decade of his career, making all those political movies. Recount and stuff.
Oh, really?
Game Changer, Recount. I think he did that All the Way one with Bryan Cranston, who was playing like LBJ or something. I think he made that one too.
He made Mystery Alaska, which is good. He made Dinner for Schmucks. Did you ever see that?
I didn't, but yeah, I heard that was pretty good.
He made The Campaign. Did you ever see that?
I did not.
Will Ferrell and Zach Galifianakis, and then Trumbo, and then Bombshell. Yeah, he went drama.
They all do. Like the Adam McKay guy who was working with Will Ferrell all those years, he went drama. He did that Vice movie, right? The Big Short. Now he's doing other stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
Calling it good?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. This has been an episode of Aaron and Justin Talk Sequels. I've been Justin.
I remain Aaron.
And please follow us on all the social media stuff and rate and review us on stuff and all that. Be our fans. Tell a friend.
And if anyone wants, I can, for like a low payment of $19.99, I can put all these podcasts on a CD and mail it to you if you prefer to listen to them that way. $20. I'll get you a CD, a CDR. I'll use a Sharpie. Right.
And I will
Aaron
also
cool mixtape.
I'll burn it onto some VHS tapes.
Sweet.
If somebody wants to listen to it on their television.
If we did that, what would we put as the video? What would be the video representation of a podcast on a VHS? Or our podcast, I should say.
I think it would just be looping video of a field full of flowers. And then every so often there'd be just a horrific image spliced in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can work on that.
Anyway,
okay.
Thanks for listening, and
thanks for listening,
catch
everyone.
us next time. I promise we'll be better.
You promise? All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Talk to you then. Bye-bye.